So hi everyone, I thought it was about time I got to talking about Star Trek Beyond. I think it's probably out of the cinemas now, that's how long it's been out, so I figured it's probably about time I talked about it. After seeing it the first time, as you might know, I was impressed. I put up my initial reaction vlog straight after that, and then I kind of was talking about in other vlogs that yes, I would get around to actually putting a vlog review up. And so I've seen it 3 times in total now. And I figure since it's been a few weeks since that last viewing that I should probably do this or not do it at all. So let's see how we go. So the first time I saw it was on the premiere screening for Australia, which was on Wednesday, July 20th. That was in the normal VMAX screen, they call it here, so that was a large screen 2D, and so that was great. Came away from that with a very good impression as compared to Into Darkness when I first saw that one. A couple of days later I went to see it with my brother and his girlfriend, and we saw that in 3D on the normal cinema screen. And I mean, it was still good. I was picking up a few more things as I went along, but the 3D didn't stand out to me. I didn't think it was worth the extra money you pay to get a 3D ticket. Fast forward a week or two, and because my dad hadn't had a chance to see it at that point, he was overseas, so I decided to see it with him, and we got tickets for that experience at the 3D session at IMAX, so obviously on the massive screen. And I have to say that really that was the way to see it in 3D. The IMAX experience was fully immersive and quite enjoyable. The downer being that the seats were a little bit uncomfortable to sit in for that duration, but the movie itself was great, so really enjoyed that. Star Trek, the story itself, I thought I quite enjoyed. It wasn't trying to be something it wasn't. It wasn't trying to replicate a classic Trek movie like Into Darkness tried. It was new, our characters had matured, and so they paid a great tribute to the 50th anniversary in this film. The basic premise being that the Enterprise has been called away to this planet, and they meet Krall, who has a beef against the Federation and its ideals, and so they find out what he's up to. They have to stop him, and that's basically it, pretty much. So good versus bad again, but none of there weren't too many twists or anything like that to convolute the story. It was quite basic, quite simple. It really did hark back to the original series in the way it felt, and yeah, so I think that's why certainly the Star Trek fans that I know who've seen it have enjoyed it and have said how good the movie is. Unfortunately, it doesn't seem to be doing so well in the box office, however, and so that's a little bit of a worry considering that Into Darkness did a lot better, yet by most Star Trek fans it was definitely the worst of the 3 films that have come out so far. So to get a bit more in depth into Star Trek Beyond, first I thought I'd start with, it continues on from Into Darkness, but it's almost as though the events of Into Darkness never took place. You could watch Star Trek from 2009 and go straight to Beyond and be none the wiser, really. They don't have those silly transporters that can beam you across solar systems from planet to planet, for example. There's no reference to Section 31 or the vengeance or the destruction that thing wreaked on San Francisco in the previous film. There's no Khan, there's no super blood, and there's no Dr. Marcus, even though at the end of Into Darkness we were led to believe that she was going to become part of the crew. There was no mention, there was nothing about her in Star Trek Beyond. And perhaps most importantly, there were no girls down to their underwear in Star Trek Beyond, which both of the previous films had. Into Darkness had that infamous scene with Alice Eve just standing there in the middle of a shuttlecraft getting changed, which just didn't make sense to anybody. While there was no reference to the previous film, I think that's probably a good thing, because there was a lot about the previous film that Trek fans anyway didn't like. What Beyond gives us is a villain who's supposedly deeper than just a villain. And I did think when I first saw the film that his backstory was a bit interesting. The fact that he served Earth, he ended up stranded on this planet after being made captain of a ship. He felt that he'd been abandoned, and then that fueled his quest for revenge. It's a simple enough story, and he does get to he does get to act that all out after finding this artifact that's a doomsday weapon, blah blah blah. But there's a few things I'll come to later on about just how he came to be who he was, this Krull character. I mean, there's a few questions that I have, and you know, I do love the discussions about Star Trek, and certainly with different fans and on different pages, been having some good discussions. Yeah, you know, if you've got some ideas or you disagree with something I'm saying, sound out in the comments below. I'd love to hear it, love to interact, and you know, have a bit of back and forth. While this film doesn't seem to be on track to becoming some raging success, I'm going to draw some comparisons. It might become like the Star Trek 5 of the new films. And just hear me out here, because Star Trek 5, though a lot of people don't like that film, it has some of the best character moments of the original movies, or at least I feel. Certainly the trifecta of Kirk, Spock and McCoy, that exists in Beyond. They certainly went back to that. And what I really liked was that you believed that this was the crew of the Enterprise. This was a seasoned crew. They knew what they were doing. They weren't whining. They weren't bitching about, oh, you didn't show your emotions to me like Uhura did in Into Darkness. There was none of that. It didn't feel like a bunch of high school kids who'd just been sent out in a spaceship. You believed that these were mature adults who were fulfilling a role and were out there in deep space. So, you know, again, thumbs up for that. There was a lot of good crew moments. As I said before, the trifecta existed. Everyone got their chance to shine. And interestingly enough, even though this turned out to be Anton Yelchin's last film, they couldn't have known that at the time they put it together. I did feel that Chekhov got a really good chance to shine, particularly in his scenes with Kirk after the downing of the Enterprise, and they're, you know, trying to figure out who this other woman is. I think it was really good what they did with his role, and everyone, you know, got their chance. So of course the Enterprise says goodbye in Beyond, and I know there were a lot of people prior to the film who were actually looking forward to that moment because they weren't fans of this version of the Enterprise. I think again, the Enterprise being a character of the show itself, they did really well to send her off in style. She put up quite a fight against the swarm ships, and you know, even after her death, as it were, still had a few tricks up her sleeve, as Kirk put it, in those final moments. So my only, I'll get into this now I suppose, but the only thing that really bothered me about Beyond is that they deliberately made changes to the ship between Into Darkness and Beyond just so that it would fit their story. So they made the nacelle struts a little bit more vulnerable. They shrunk the warp engines down. They made the neck smaller. So this isn't the same ship from Into Darkness. So somewhere in its mission, it's been changed or refitted just to fit the story so that they could blow it up in Star Trek Beyond. That doesn't sit quite well with me, and I know people are going to go, well, you know, does it matter? I mean, they went at length to make these changes just to fit their story, when I think they probably still could have done the same thing with the original design. I don't see why it needed to be changed. You know, it's just a minor thing that I have. There's probably going to be a few more, so bear with me, guys. Unpacking the movie a bit, I did feel the opening scene was a little bit ordinary, you know, with the Kirk was trying to broker a peace treaty with them and another race, and I mean, that happens, but the aliens that we meet turn out to be these tiny kittens that were kind of cute, but, you know, they wanted to attack Kirk. I mean, if this was a diplomatic thing, would that really be happening? I don't know. Kirk ends up with a ripped shirt, which is a good homage back to the original series. He always ended up with a ripped shirt, but I just felt the scene was a little bit cartoony, a little bit too childish, and I was really hoping that this wasn't setting the scene for how the movie was going to continue. Thankfully it wasn't, but there was a story point that was important from that scene that carried on through. It turned out that Krull was looking for this thing that that Kirk was presenting to them. Fair enough. So it wasn't all pointless. When it comes to the aliens, when the Enterprise comes to Yorktown and we see all the aliens there, and the fact that, because this is the 50th anniversary of Star Trek, Justin Lin said, let's put 50 new alien races in the film. Now that's a great idea, and I'm sure it took them a lot of work and a lot of things to do. But even if I went through the movie and counted 50 new aliens, where's the aliens that we're familiar with? Aside from the Vulcans, and the humans, we didn't really get to see any of our familiar Bolians, Andorians, Tellarites. I mean, they're at least those are the founding races of the Federation. You'd expect to see them around. In fact, through most of these new movies, apart from the Vulcans and the Klingons, and I guess you could say the Romulans, we haven't seen many of the alien races that we've come to know from the original Star Trek. So, give us a bit of what we know as well, guys. I mean, hats off to you for doing the 50 aliens thing, but we need to see some familiarity, just so that we can say, yes, this is the universe that we know. Then we go to this scene, we have Kirk and McCoy, they're sharing a drink, they're having a chat. This sort of echoes a similar scene from Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan, where Kirk was getting older and, you know, again, McCoy's there having a drink. I think it also mirrors a scene from the unaired pilot for the original series, The Cage. I think there was a similar scene between Captain Pike and his doctor. Don't quote me on that, but I do recall that happening. So some good throwbacks there. We have the trio dynamic, then we have Kirk and McCoy, then we have Kirk and Spock. They have some good moments, especially when they don't know how to tell each other their news that they come across. The Spock and McCoy scenes are amazingly done. Certainly everyone loved those in the cinemas.
Definitely you.
And the new character, Jayla, yes, we need more Jayla in the new films, assuming we get some. But Jayla was great, especially in her interactions when she first meets Scotty, when she then becomes more part of the crew in helping them out and that sort of thing. We could definitely do with more Jayla in future Trek, so thumbs up for that.
I am Jayla, and you are Montgomery Scott.
Hi, Scotty.
Come now, Montgomery Scotty.
I did like that they didn't harp on the Spock-Uhura relationship this time around. It was there, but it was in the background. It does bear some importance to the story later on, but they didn't just stick on it and you know, make a big fuss about it. Also, they didn't make a big fuss about Sulu's relationship with his partner on Yorktown and his daughter. Now, Sulu is the gay character now, and I shouldn't say it that way, but I mean, he's the character that they decided to make was gay. So his partner is on Yorktown, he meets him, there's a brief moment, but nothing too on the nose, if you like. Yet still people in the comments and things are saying, oh, why do they make Sulu gay? It's almost like they're acting as that's the reason they wouldn't go see the movie, and I think that's really stupid. The people I went with didn't even notice. They thought he was a family member, or they didn't even pay attention to the scene. That's how quick and how normal that scene came across. You know, it was a non-point, and I think they handled it well. They treated it with respect, but they didn't harp on it again, and that's exactly what you want from something like that. Again, so there were some other moments. So certainly when the Enterprise is getting attacked, so as a character, the Enterprise puts up a great fight. She gets a decent send-off. There is a scene that certainly I paid attention to, where Uhura basically sacrifices herself as they need to separate the Saucer from the ship, and to allow Kirk and the Saucer section to get away, Uhura presses a button, leaving herself stuck in the engineering section, which is going down. So I thought that was a good moment. Uhura certainly got to kick some butt leading up to that, but then her sacrifice, it told me that this was a mature thing. And she got in there, she got involved, she knew what she had to do, and that's what she did. Of course, she didn't die, she was with Krull, so he captured her, brought her to the planet, blah blah blah. But that moment was great. It was like, oh wow, you know. There's a slight twist. There is this alien who basically lures the Enterprise into this trap, and all the while we're constantly wondering, is she really who she says she is? And Kirk is thinking this as well. When we finally do find out her true motive, she gets pancaked by the Saucer section. It's kind of a bit of a funny scene. Well, I thought it was funny anyway. Interestingly enough, this is just a small tidbit. So if you've seen the previous films, you'll know about the character called Cupcake and the security chief. So he appeared in Star Trek 2009, and he did appear again in Into Darkness. Apparently he was supposed to die in that movie, but they took that scene out, so he didn't actually die. And then so he was going to come back in Star Trek Beyond, but then apparently and I think he was going to die here as well. But they removed that scene too. So Cupcake is just turning out to be the red shirt who just can't die. It's a shame that he didn't get a scene in Beyond. It would have been good to just have that continuity going on. But yes, anyway, so there's a little tip for you. at the, I suppose the center point of the film and is this new starbase Yorktown, the big snow globe in space. The designer have done an amazing job on this, and I had a sense of wow when we first saw it. And I think it mirrors the scene from Star Trek 3, The Search for Spock, when the Enterprise first comes home to the new mushroom-shaped space dock that we all sort of know from that era. You know, the vast size of it and all of those amazing shots of the Enterprise entering and all that kind of thing, mirrored really well in Star Trek Beyond with this new amazing globe of a space station that we get a few minutes to actually take in. And even on IMAX, you're just looking everywhere trying to see what's this place about. You know, they have these entry lanes that the ships pass through. There's water above them so that you can see the ship passing beneath. I mean, it is amazingly thought out and put together. I would love to go there if we ever had a place like that. There's just some amazing scenes there. So well done again. Big tick for that. And then as we go along, we then meet the Commodore who runs the place, and as Kirk's about to go on the mission, you know, with the Enterprise, he's like, you know, the Enterprise has the best sensors, we can do this kind of thing. And then there's this scene of foreshadowing where she goes, yes, the only other ship that has better sensors is currently under construction. And when you've watched all the previews and you know the Enterprise is kind of not going to make it out of here, it's in the back of my head going, well, hang on, that's going to be the new ship. So, a bit of, I don't know, I mean, I think in today's world you can't have it just hanging off the end and go, well, yeah, are they going to get a new ship? People want to know before the end of before the closing credits, so I suppose they had to do that. Anyway, it seemed a little bit obvious. So obviously then the ship goes, we get to the battle, and again this was really well thought out because the first thing that the swarm ships went for on the Enterprise was the deflector dish. Once you take that out, escape is almost impossible. You don't want to go to warp, for example, even though Kirk does make that order because, well, heck, you want to get out of there. Then they cut off the engines, and you know, it's pretty much downhill from there. But it was well thought out, it was well put together. And of course we finally got to see the Enterprise separate its saucer in an emergency, which was something the original Enterprise was always supposed to do, never seen. As I was saying, I wonder what the haters did think about the Enterprise going down. Probably a lot of people are going to be happy about it, I don't know. I felt for the Enterprise anyway. So there's a whole bunch of shout outs in the movie, and again, they're hidden everywhere, some in plain sight, some you find out later on. We find this ship on the planet, which Jayla is living in, but she recognizes it as when she meets Scotty, gets him to help her fix it, that sort of thing. And the Franklin is then becomes quite integral to the end part of the film. So its registry number 326 is an homage to Leonard Nimoy's birthday, which is the 26th of March. But it creates a slight paradox, which apparently can be explained away, but it isn't explained in the film. So this being the first Warp 4 ship makes it older than the NX Enterprise from the series Enterprise, and yet it has a registration number that's higher than that one. It can be worked out, don't want to go into it here, but you know, can read up on that. And then you have to think, we find out later on that this is actually Krell came on this ship as Captain Edison. So one, what's going on there? How did Edison turn into this alien-looking Krell, and why does he start reverting back at the end? It must be something to do with the alien technology, but it's not explained. What happened to Krell's crew? Did he kill them all? Did they not want to go along with his plan for domination against the Federation? Or, you know, did they turn into aliens as well and become his henchmen? You know, what's going on there? We never really find out. You know, the Franklin crash landed there over 100 years ago. There's a long time to go. So did Krell just use their bodies for energy to keep himself sustained? That's not really planned out. So then, if they're not his crew, where did his henchmen come from? And Jayla does mention that Krell had been pulling other ships down, so I guess he gives them a chance to join him, or I don't know. Again, it's not really explained. Did he forget where the Franklin was, or did he just not need it once he found the advanced alien tech on the planet Altamid? Which, just as another side note, Altamid, the planet they went to, is an anagram of Matilda, which is Simon Pegg's daughter's name. So, nice little hat tip there as well. So yeah, did he forget? Did he not need it? Anyway, Jayla's made it her home. She's put up these emitters around so that it is hidden from plain sight, which is kind of a cool idea. A bit of a antiquated cloaking device, if you like. But yes, you know, so it's there. The design of the Franklin was spot on for the era. They really did well. Apparently it wasn't designed to look like the Enterprise NX-01, but it ended up looking that way, and I think they did a really good job with it. I know a lot of, again, Star Trek fans really like the Franklin design, just because of that. And the way it was used in the final climax was great. I loved the bit where at Yorktown they use it to stop Krell and his ships. That for me was just like, wow, that's cool. Yeah. Scotty makes mention that these ships were built in space, and yet the Enterprise we know in this timeline was built on Earth. An interesting bit of dialogue to make the distinction. We don't... is it because building on Earth is a more advanced technique? I don't know. But anyway, there it is. Some of the other nods to other things. So we have in the captain's log that it's the 966th day of their voyage into their 5-year mission. This nods back to September 1966. We have Chekhov getting on with all the girls. He was a bit like that in the original series, so it was good they did this again. There is one scene where he's kicked out of a girl's quarters. There's another where he checks out Jayla's ass where they first meet her, and then at the end he's getting on with some alien girl and telling her about where vodka comes from or something like that, which again was a line from the original series. So they did really well with Chekhov's role, as I said before. Yeah, I thought that was really great. I've mentioned about Starbase Yorktown and the mirroring to Space Dock from Star Trek 3. They did that really well. There was just some great scenes there. And, you know, I even noticed, I think it was the third time around I noticed, but when the Enterprise docks, there's even another starship in the background, which I'd love to know which one it is. That's just me. I love all that kind of stuff. But yeah, it just really harked back to the old Star Trek 3 and how that was done. When they do get to Yorktown, there is a registry number called over the speakers, and it's NCC 2893. This actually is a tribute to Captain Picard's ship from The Next Generation. He commanded the Stargazer before the Enterprise, and that's his registry number, 2893. So there you go. Then when they're talking about the Franklin and how it got so far away from where it was supposed to be, Scotty goes off on a few different stories and theories about what happened, defecting to the Romulans, which obviously we know the Romulans. It ended up in the Gagarin radiation belt. This was referred to in Enterprise, and also one of the rumors was it got caught up in a giant green space hand, which refers to an original series episode where the Enterprise gets caught by a giant green space hand, and this hand appears in the end credits as well. So there you go. There are references back to the Xindi and the Romulan Wars. Again, this is covered by Enterprise, and the Romulan Wars have always been something as part of Star Trek's history. There is a reference to Voyager. Commodore Paris is one of those, in that she is a descendant of Tom Paris, who would end up piloting Voyager in the series. And there is also a reference in when Scotty talks about beaming Spock and McCoy up and combining the two. This actually happened in a Voyager episode with their resident Vulcan, Tuvok, and their morale officer, Neelix. And so yeah, that was a hat tip to that as well. Of course, we have the Beastie Boys song, Sabotage, which continues through these Trek films. Kirk first played it when he was stealing his stepfather's car, and it's back here. It was used in the first preview for Star Trek Beyond. Now, I was a bit iffy about it in the preview, but it was used very well in the movie. You know, as Jayla calls it, it's the beats and shouting. She loves Earth music, and I even laughed when McCoy asked if it was classical music when they were when they were playing it. So it's quite funny. It was well used. It wasn't the Beastie Boys that was effective in this scene. It was the fact that they were transmitting over radio. So it could have been any song, but just the way they used it, the choreography to the music. There's one scene in particular where Yorktown uses it to fight the swarm, and yeah, I just thought it worked really well. And I'm not even a Beastie Boys fan, so yeah, well done there. Like, it wasn't, I don't think it was too on the nose again. I like the fact that Scotty and Keynes' relationship was toned down also in this. I know I'm sort of jumping around here. But in both previous films, the Scotty Keenser thing was like you had a master and his pet, and they were inseparable. And I mean, that's great, because they were on that starbase on Delta Vega together, now they're on the Enterprise. What really got to me in Into Darkness was when Scotty resigned his commission, and then was like waiting around for Keenser to do the same. Now, Keenser is a Starfleet officer, and he should be able to make his own decisions. Why would he have to follow Scotty just because Scotty decided to have a bit of a tanty and not stay on the ship? So that never sat well with me. So I'm glad that in this film they separated the two. When they reunited, there was a bit of that, oh hey, it's great to see you again, but they kept it really just low-key. There was none of this that they had to be together, and that really worked for me. I thought that was good. It gave Keenser his own identity, which I think was important for him, so that he didn't just look like this part that they'd made up as a bit of comic relief. You know, he had his own role, and that was good. Definitely do more of that. Let Keenser be his own person, and have Jayla come along. You can have Scotty, you can have that dynamic of the three. Maybe Keenser can get jealous, I don't know. They could do something with that. Of course, being the 50th anniversary, there was this really great nod, and it all revolved around Spock. Of course, Leonard Nimoy passed away last year, and so there was a few nods to that in the film. There was the initial one where Zachary Quinto's Spock finds out that he has passed away, and so we see him, a picture of Spock, from 2230 was his birth to 2263 when he passed away. I know that only adds up to 33 years, but then you have to take into account all the years he lived in the Prime Universe before coming back here, all that. So yeah, a little bit of detail about him as the commander of the Enterprise A, all that sort of stuff. So that was great to start with. And then towards the end of the film, we see Spock going through his effects, and he pulls out this photo of the original crew, and it's from Star Trek V, so it's them as they've aged, grown together as a family, and that was such a touching moment. There's, you know, the music was right and everything, and that one moment was just really well done again. So that was great. Yeah, and then of course there is also after the end credits there is the tribute to Leonard Nimoy and one for Anton Yelchin as well. So really nicely done. A great send off for both actors. Yeah. So where does it sort of take us? I mean, I think at this point I've talked enough about the nods and the things. You know, the movie itself is quite fun. It's interesting to hear from non-Trekkies that they felt that Into Darkness was better, and this could be because they're fans of Benedict Cumberbatch, or, you know, for whatever reason. And it does show in the box office that Into Darkness has done better. Beyond is the better Star Trek film, and it's something that the Trek fans are certainly liking, but if it's not performing as well, and if we do get a fourth movie, are Paramount likely to go with the ones that the Trek fans like, or the one that's going to make them more money? And unfortunately, I think it is the latter. So we might get more Into Darkness-y kind of films, which I hope they handle it better. Michael Giacchino did an amazing job with the score again. I can't think of a track that stands out in particular, as Into Darkness had some music that was quite different, but everything went well, and he even did some nods back to original Trek again. So there is a scene when Kirk and Chekhov are captured by one of Jayla's traps, and they use some music from one of the episodes Shore Leave, very similar cues in there. Then when the Enterprise approaches the planet Ultimate, there is some musical cues back to Star Trek The Motion Picture. So there's all these little nods, and the main thing about it, and I've said this before already, but the main thing about it is that they didn't shove it in your face. They made it quite light, they made it just subtle, and they've made a story that kind of works through. It feels like an original series episode. There is some danger involved. There is a villain. They didn't redeem him at the end. I felt that might have been an option, but you know, there was a little bit more to him than just revenge. He was, you know, he was a product of the culture that he was brought up in, with the wars and everything, and he couldn't adjust to Starfleet becoming a peacekeeping force after that and all that. So, you know, it got to him a bit. Could they have done more with the film? I don't know. I feel that the film had the right mix of everything, and it's just a shame it doesn't seem to be doing so well. Of course, I've done my part. I've seen it 3 times, and I will be getting the Blu-ray when it comes out. I will be buying up the special editions. There are some that are coming up, hopefully with the models of the ships and stuff like that. So I'm definitely going to be on board with those. And I kind of hope we do get another one if the same crew are going to be behind, are going to be involved. I think Simon Pegg, Doug Jung, you did amazing jobs with that. With this, Justin Lin, you did a great job on your first science fiction film. You know, it all worked. And some other little notes: Doug Jung played Sulu's partner, and Justin Lin's kid played this little green alien dude in the film. So you know, there's all these little things in there to notice. One thing I didn't really touch on was at the end of the movie. You know, we have our trio, Kirk, Spock, McCoy, all looking out at the ship under construction, and kind of how I would have liked it to end was you just see the ship under construction, and you might see a sign. Oh, there's that picture there. And you might see a sign, and it's like, you know, Starfleet construction, and have the name of the ship. And I was thinking, say it was going to be the Excelsior originally, and they would just have slapped like a thing over that sign, so it's like, instead of Excelsior, it is now going to be the Enterprise. Fade to black, go to the credits. But what they gave us instead, and I'm still amazed at this, even if I probably would have preferred a little bit of the unknown, so that you know, you'd leave you guessing. But what they gave us was this time lapse of the construction of the ship, and eventually it's out in space, and of course it's the Enterprise A. Now you might remember from one of my previous vlogs, I was like, please don't give us the Enterprise A just for the sake of it, and it looks like, well, they've done that. I guess Kirk saved Yorktown, so it's a big enough thing, but the ship didn't complete the 5-year mission, so I don't know what makes it special. But in any case, we have an Enterprise A. It's a new design. We don't get to see too much of it for criticism, but it looks like they corrected some of the things that a lot of people were fussing about on the previous version. I'd like to see more of it, of course, in Star Trek 4, so bring it on. Just to continue on the nerd factor, Star Trek Beyond took place in 2263. Now, by the time the ship at the end is finally finished, are we looking at the end of 2263? Are we a couple of years on? The reason I bring this up, the first episode of the original series was in 2265, and so I'm wondering if we're getting near parity between the two universes. Could we be looking at some of those adventures from the original series going to come in to the Kelvin timeline? Now, of course, we want more original stories, but they could give us a twist on something that's already given as well. And since that's what they did with Into Darkness, with Khan already being covered, perhaps we could look at some of the other stuff that came out. Now, for me, most of the standout episodes from the original series were actually in the second season, such as Mirror Mirror, The Doomsday Machine, The Ultimate Computer, and things like that. We could have our first contact with the Romulans, as they did in Balance of Terror. That was one of the big episodes of the first season. We could meet the Telosians from the cage, since that hasn't happened yet. All different things like this. So it'll be interesting to see where we go. I would like a new story, but as I've mentioned previously in this, I want some of that familiarity to come back. Bring back some Andorians, bring back the Tellarites. The Vulcans and the humans are the 4 main races of the Federation, so we should be seeing them around. Bring in some Kaishans, the cat-like people. Just give us something familiar. Certainly with Chekhov not likely to return, certainly that's what they've been saying, we may need a new navigation officer, so could Lieutenant Eriks, the 3-armed helmsman from the animated series, they could bring him in. You know, there's a lot that they could do, assuming we get a 4th movie, and yeah, so it'll be interesting to see how this all pans out. But in any case, I really enjoyed Star Trek Beyond. If you haven't seen it and you're able to, definitely I recommend go see it. I know there's a lot of fans who've said they're not going to because they feel that Paramount is trying to rip off fans due to some fan film productions that have been under scrutiny. Look, I'm not getting involved in that. I love Star Trek, so I'm going to go watch it. Yeah, so from now it's a wait until the Blu-rays come out, and I think that'll be at the end of the year. And then we have the new series Star Trek Discovery, which will start in January. So exciting times to be a Trekkie in any case. And I'm just really glad that Star Trek Beyond was a good movie. I just wish it was doing better in in the box office. Anyway, thanks for bearing with me through this. If you watched through it all, well done to you. I guess you either like the sound of my voice or you're just into Star Trek and want to hear my thoughts too. Sound off in the comments. I probably missed a ton of things, and I'm happy to discuss and be challenged on some of the stuff I've brought up. Be probably back to the normal vlogging after this. I just felt this was something that I said I would do and I had to do, and let's see how it has turned out. Thanks for bearing with me, guys. I will chat to you soon. Adios.